Hello, everyone. Welcome to the unique American experiment. This is democracy in action. This is the day Americans have their voices heard. This is the...
I'm going to have to ask you to stop.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I was yelling the bullshit rhetoric that we get from CNN, and I was going to make us be as awesome as CNN.
I think you just existing are more awesome than CNN. You taking a shit is more awesome than CNN.
Speaking of that, I think CNN's taking a shit right now. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We're gonna go through some of what's going on tonight and talk about a lot of the things that the mainstream media doesn't want to discuss in the middle of this election. Oh, this is the most important election of our lives. Did you know that? Are you aware?
I'm going to get into that in a second. But first, I just want to take a minute to recognize and to acknowledge that a lot of folks feel super stressed and anxious and upset and fucking worried and et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to acknowledge that and remind folks you're not alone. And if you saw any of my Deception 2020 videos, then you will have seen me talk about the Patoka concept, the solidarity of the shaken, where it's kind of like when you fall into this abyss of like, holy shit, the system wasn't made for me. And then you're like, oh, I'm down in this like this nihilistic depths. Like, oh, fuck, what do we do now? There are millions of people in that abyss with you. And so find some comfort in that, whether that be actually in the streets, or whether that be, doing support behind the scenes, or whether that be hanging out with us here. You're definitely not alone. And we're going to get through this because we've gotten through a lot of the most important elections of our lives. And we've gotten through a lot of fascism, and fascism is not a Trump thing. That shit existed long before Trump wandered into the White House like a lost Cheeto.
How exciting, I'm going to answer Nick in 1 second. How exciting that we get to choose between a racist, war criminal, sexual predator on one hand, and a racist, war criminal, sexual predator on the other hand.
And then
how fucking thrilling is that? Because lots of times you don't get to. There aren't that many war criminal, sexual predators out there to choose from.
Well, actually, to kind of flow off of what you were saying, I just retweeted something by Richard Wolff. Oh my gosh, you retweeted it too. Proof that the U.S. election system is rigged is the fact that a Trump could be the GOP candidate and a Biden the Democratic candidate. Offering them as the best possible leaders our society can produce insults us all. Very well put.
Absolutely. Okay, so for those of you who are new to this, every time we do a live stream, we raise money for a cause that is not us. So all of the proceeds this week, this hour, are going to mutual aid disaster relief, because we figured it'd be a good idea in the middle of this fucking shitstorm, in the middle of this this vote between these two war criminals. It'd be a good idea to give to a group that is helping people directly in their community. Doesn't matter who they voted for. Doesn't matter whether they can pay for it. None of that matters. They're just helping people in their community. It's nationwide. They often help people after natural disasters, but it could be other disasters as well.
The unnatural disaster of capitalism.
It could be the capitalism disaster. It could be the Wall Street disaster. So no one has given yet, but if you get a chance, click the dollar sign.
Yay, Christine.
There we go. Thank you,
so
Christine.
Much. Just to give you an example, Mutual Aid Disaster Relief has been sending out, care packages throughout the course of this pandemic. Things like hand sanitizer and masks. Leading up to, the election, they've been able to. Thank you, Tony. They've been able to send out, things like medical supplies. So Mutual Aid Disaster Relief is an incredibly rad and important organization that works and networks with folks around the country, and really is kind of like one of the hubs that allows like local and autonomous mutual aid groups to connect with each other. So they are super, super important and super awesome. So please, if you're watching this on Facebook, go to youtube.com/wow. Thank you, Lori and OneChat.
OneChat, $20. Thank you so much. And Lori.
If you're watching this on Facebook, go to youtube.com/moment of clarity. You can where you go to leave a comment, you can click on the $ and donate to mutual aid disaster relief.
Absolutely. And here's the thing: is we're able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, most of the time. Sometimes I bump into something. Sometimes I kick a dog. But for the most part, I'm able to do it. And so in this case, we are going to bring you and talk about some of the results coming in. And at the same time, we can tell you that at the end of the day, the oligarchy is going to win this election. The ruling elite, old white men, fucking assholes, are going to win this election. And yet at the same time, we can still bring you some of these results, because I do understand that the shade of oppression will change if Biden gets elected as opposed to Trump. And so people are paying attention. It's just like I can pay attention to a sports game and, call the scores like, oh my God, they hit a home run, and realize that at the end of the game, guess what?
Thank you, Ana.
The world is the same. It's the same after the game.
Well, yeah, the struggle is the same. Thank you, Jeremy. The reality on the situation. Wow, the reality of the situation on the ground.
Thank you, Gail.
Is not going to change. The most marginalized, the most oppressed people will continue to be.
Thank you, Ana Jimena.
So really, we are not looking. You're looking at a blue MAGA hat or a red MAGA hat. So it's important to place that in context. But as Lee noted, the results will have an effect on how people respond. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Carla.
So we will, Lee's going to be looking more at the results than I am. I'm just going to be periodically raining on everyone's parade by telling you that it doesn't matter.
Thank you, Donald.
Would you like to give some updates? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought you had them.
Well, there's very little updates so far. We are going to talk about when the votes get counted. So far, they've called Indiana for Trump. Big news there. He's got 11 electoral votes so far. Biden has 0 because they haven't called any other states yet. They're looking a lot at Florida. One thing to keep note of is if Biden. So it's fairly unlikely we know who won this thing tonight, because in order for Biden to win, he'd have to probably have to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and all 3 of those take a while to count the votes. Pennsylvania is saying they're not going to have their votes in for 2-3 days. So it's unlikely that there's a definitive winner tonight. However, that being said, if Biden were to win Florida, which apparently Florida, they claim, is good at counting votes now, which I think they just don't announce what they've thrown away. But so they claim Florida will be in tonight. And if Biden were to win Florida, which would be an upset in Florida, then the odds of Trump winning the whole thing after losing Florida is 1% or something. It's a tiny. It becomes very hard for Trump to win it after losing Florida. So that is one way you may know tonight whether Biden won this thing or not. Something that I like to keep saying, because I'll keep mentioning as I maybe bring you more numbers or whatever, is that these are the numbers of votes that were counted. These are not the millions purged from the rolls. And this type of thing is almost never mentioned on CNN, Fox News, any of them. Greg Palast estimates that, and he does a lot of research, investigative journalist, does a lot of research into this, written books about it, New York Times bestseller, estimates that over 16 million people have been purged from these rolls, which is mostly people of color and younger people, but really people of color are the ones who are purged the most. And so every one of these things, this is how CNN should do this reporting, as they're clicking on little counties and going, well, if this turns red and this, each minute they should go, okay, that has turned red for Donald Trump. Also, millions of people purged from the rolls. Okay, going on. And it would just be a completely different broadcast if they were endlessly reminding you that millions are purged from the rolls. And most people who are purged, ultimately, especially if they mailed in, dropped off their ballot, think they voted. Even people that went in person. Thank you, Experience. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Wow, $20. That's awesome.
Again, all the funds today are going to mutual aid disaster relief. So just a reminder there. Sorry, carry on.
So most people think they voted even when they have been purged. Even if they go in person, they're often given a provisional ballot. Many people don't know what that is, and so they still think they voted.
Provisional ballot's like a fight. You might as well be writing it on toilet paper.
Yeah, you might as well fart into a dream catcher and then throw it out into the waves, and that's your vote.
Thank you, Maki.
So anyway, I just think that should be repeated endlessly as we're bringing people numbers, and none of the mainstream media, they fucking don't talk about it. They don't mention it because they want you to think that our electoral system is just great. It's just perfect. Speaking of electoral system, would you like to spend a moment talking about the electoral system?
Just a moment.
What are electoral votes? Why?
You mean the Electoral College, or you mean what is voting?
The college, the Electoral College.
Because
the past two, Trump and Bush both lost the popular vote. They had got fewer votes.
So basically, the way that this is structured is, and a lot of you already know this. But I think it's important to bring it up for folks who might be watching from I almost said out of town, out of country.
But they haven't seen your anger behind it.
Well, you know what? Yes, I'm fucking angry, but at some point I'm almost just like, it's so fucking corrupt that it's almost, it reminds me of something a friend of mine who's a refugee said. You have to laugh because there's so much to cry about. And there's just so much to cry about with our electoral system. You can't even call it an electoral system. It's a corporatist, I don't know. It's like a corporatist choose your own adventure that most of the adventures are broken or under construction.
You're like, if you choose this, go to page 34. You turn there, it just bursts into flames.
Right.
Ah.
It's like I'm sorry. This is under construction, pending funds from the military-industrial complex. So yeah, the Electoral College is basically it's basically a doorstop for democracy. It's basically like something that allows the powers that be, the corporatocracy, to ensure that the people don't actually have the full vote. We don't have like the final say in who gets elected. And we've seen this many times. For instance, I don't know, 4 years ago, like you don't have to go. Thank you, Emma. You don't have to go like far back into history to look at how the Electoral College works. Hillary Clinton technically won the popular vote. And what the popular vote means is that like the people at the polls voted more for Hillary than they did for Trump. And again, all of these things are connected, of course. So for instance, you can't talk about like what was happening at the polls, the polling places, unless you also talk about the fact that millions of people were turned away. I think like, was it Michigan or Wisconsin where Trump won by 10,000 or something?
Michigan, he won by 10,000 and 500,000 were purged using interstate crosscheck, which, quick update on interstate crosscheck, it is no more, largely thanks to Greg Palast and his lawsuits.
Thank you all.
In a lot of states, he succeeded. I mean, there were other people joining his lawsuit, so it's not just Greg Palast, but he succeeded in getting interstate crosscheck basically wiped off the map, which, for those who don't know, I've talked about it a lot. Interstate crosscheck purged millions of people across the country, again, largely people of color, from being allowed to vote. So incredible that he got that stopped.
Yeah, no, he does incredible work. But so all of these things are of course connected, and the Electoral College is basically like that final, thank you, Nick. No, we are not going to live stream until we know who wins in quotation marks. Lee is going to be on live with.
I'm going to be on RT News starting at 10 p.m. So you can if you're dying to follow me, you can watch me on RT as one of their panel with their election coverage. But we'll be doing this till 8:30. So
yeah, and I will be going down to the White House. Just
to say hi,
shits and
giggles.
So
mainly
yeah,
the giggles.
So basically, the Electoral College is a way to get around any form of democracy that, again, we don't have in our actual voting system. But the Electoral College is basically a way to ensure that the people don't have the final say in voting.
Right, and maybe you already said this, but I mean that's why it was originally created. Was if the elite feared that what happens if America votes for something we don't want, and so they said, well, we'll have these electors where if all shit hit the fan, at the end of the day, the electors can overturn and vote for whatever the fuck they want. So the Electoral College was a way to just, thank you, Lucy, was a way to just make sure that the elite had their say. Now we have refined that system so that the elite purge all progressives. This is another thing you will not find in your mainstream media. So if you're watching CNN and all that shit, they refined the system so that all progressives are purged from the system before you get to tonight, before you get to the general election in the presidency, but really in most races, governors, senators, all real progressives, except in some select areas, but a few, very few. All progressives are basically purged. They're purged by way of money mainly, but there's other systemic ways to purge them from the system. Same with libertarians. Libertarians are purged from the system before they get to, libertarian Republicans are purged. And we saw this against Ron Paul, right? I'm not a Ron Paul fan, but I'm more so a fan of Ron Paul than most Republicans, and he was purged from the system. Similar to Bernie Sanders. So the ruling oligarchy has refined this system to make sure that when you get to today, when you get to the election day, we are not choosing between a large pantheon of impressive, progressive people that really want to change things and create a different system and decrease inequality and end war. And none of that's here tonight. None of that's on the docket.
Yeah. And also another thing to point out is that this would be Trump versus Sanders if it weren't for the fact that the Democrats rigged the primaries to such an extent that Sanders was booted out, even though the vast majority of people Democratic voters wanted Sanders as opposed to Biden. And he let them for the second time boot him out of that spot. So again, to kind of circle back to what Wolf, Professor Wolf noted, and what we've mentioned too, is that just the fact that these are our choices. Do you want the blue dumpster fire, or the red dumpster fire? Do you want which white, old, racist, sexist, crotchety white dude would you like? Is really an abhorrent choice. And I think the other thing that's interesting is that I was seeing on, this hashtag has been going for quite some time, but the hashtag settle for Biden, which is just like, nothing speaks to the power of US propaganda more than the fact that people are proudly using the hashtag settle for Biden and saying that they voted for Biden. Like, yes, I weighed my morals against the two-party system and I chose the two-party system. Yeah, like, what the fuck? And this is the power of US propaganda. The idea that they can get you to choose someone that clearly goes against everything that you want. Biden goes against anyone who wants peace, anyone who wants a livable future, anyone who wants racial justice. And all of that shit goes absolutely against, Biden's entire platform, universal health care. And yet they're like, but still we have to stop Trump because.
Thank you, Underhill.
Because they told
Thank you, Jay Blood.
Because they told us that Trump is fascist and it's gonna make America awful and this is the most important election of our lives, and this is again like what you were talking about, the most important election of our lives shit. I've been hearing that since 2000, before I could even vote. It's always the most important election. And the thing is, and this is something that I brought up with Eugene Purrier when I had him on my series Deception 2020, which you can find at my website, archkillingapathy.com, was he was like, the only thing that makes an election important is what's going on outside of the ballot box. So, and outside like the Oval Office. So if you look at, he brought up.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. He brought up the Goldwater election, 1964, I want to say, and talked about how that was such a powerful election because of what was going on with the civil rights movement in that moment. And it's the same thing, that we can talk about happening right now. It's a fucking intense election because of the pandemic and because of what's going on with Black Lives Matter and because of what's going on with climate change and the fight for climate justice. But these two pieces of shit, racist, old, crotchety, sexist, asshole dimwits are not what make this election important.
And but also Tony makes a good point. He said, I voted for legal weed, which there are many things to vote for that are not just the presidential race. And
I say the only things worth voting for are not the presidential race.
Yeah. So that being said, like I said at the beginning of this, for those of you joining us late, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we can tell you that at the end of this election, the oligarchy will win, whether it's Biden or Trump. And I can still tell you some interesting details about what is going down right now. So Trump has tried to set this up. And here's the thing: is I'm opposed to fucking stealing elections. So if it seems like the quote unquote more legitimate result is that Biden won, then I'm going to stand up for that result because I want a legitimate election of some sort. Now, I will keep talking about how fucked the machines are and everything, but anyway, you get the point. Trump has tried to set this up in order to if he doesn't win it by some kind of landslide, he's tried to set it up to steal it in a way. He tried to tell all of his followers to vote on the day of. And so his hope is that all of you and everybody across America is tuned in to CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. And the results that will come in first are the vote in person, because those are often tabulated fairly instantly. And so his hope is that on the day of, meaning today, the news media starts running around going, wow, Trump won. He won states we didn't even think he was going to win, like, Virginia and shit. And the mail-in votes, which 100 million people have mailed in or dropped off votes, early voted, those will be counted over the next day or two, depending on the state. Some states are quicker, some states are slower. And his hope is that he can establish himself as the winner and then try and shut down the counting of the rest of the votes. This has been very clear. I think it's not really much of an argument that this is what he's trying to do. Pennsylvania, many are saying, may be the most crucial state in all of this. It could come down to Pennsylvania. And if that's the case, Pennsylvania has outwardly said they won't have their results fully counted for at least a few days. There is no way you will have 100% finished result in Pennsylvania until, I don't know, Thursday, Friday, who knows? But it could be a shit show if Trump declares himself the winner tonight, despite not having the votes in. And something else that Thanks, Nick. Something else I can tell you guys is, I said this in the beginning, but I know some of you are joining later, is that there are certain states that do count theirs quicker. And if we learn about those, that could tell us a lot. That could tell us whether Biden is going to win. So Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas apparently are much quicker at getting their vote counts in, which means they're quicker at throwing out all of the black people votes. And they do it far quicker. They have a machine for it. It just blinks a black person and it just sets fire to the vote. It's great. It's great how they've really facilitated the technology.
It's very streamlined.
Very streamlined. So if we see that Biden wins like Florida or Georgia or North Carolina or Texas, that could really show that Trump has a very unlikely chance of winning. And you could know that tonight. Now, if Biden loses Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas, that really just says that things are basically on the expected path so far, because he wasn't really expected to win some of those places. I mean, there's been these garbage polls out saying, oh, Biden's up by, 5% or whatever. And, the polls they really are trash because, you purge so many voters. So the polls don't fit with the results, quote unquote. And that's why our polls are always off.
So I just want to respond to Nick's question. I do think that a lot of people will go back to sleep or will remain asleep if Biden wins, because if they're the kind of people that would go to sleep if Biden wins, they were never really awake in that, woke sense that we talk about. I think there has been a lot of more activism, and I would say radicalism, because I think activism can also mean like the sort of hashtag resistance, which is problematic. But that's a whole like word nerd thing that we can get into some other time. But yeah, I think that, and this has been a fear. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Brian.
This has been a concern that's been brought up by organizers and, alternative media folks, radical media folks on the left, is that if, that having Trump win, and I keep using wins in quotations because you can't win in a farcical, totally rigged system. But if Trump wins, then people will really fight. People will fucking get gritty and raw and jagged and get out into the streets, which is what we have to do regardless of the fuck who wins, because no matter who wins tonight or this week, we lose. The people lose. And that is something that is just that has to be very clear. And I think that, to your point, Nick, that a lot of people, if Biden does win, are going to be like, great, I can just fucking head on out and not worry about this. I mean, at J20, which was the inauguration in early 2017 here in DC, I saw a lot of signs that said shit like, well, if we're Hillary won, I'd be at brunch right now. And I'm like, yeah, that's the fucking problem, okay? Fucking Warhawk Hillary, that is not okay for you to be off brunching. Like, kids are still going to be bombed and thrown in cages and all of this shit. Like, so yeah, I think
literally Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker tweeted, because he's been tweeting a lot about how horrible Trump is. He tweeted out, "I can't wait for this to be over, for the election to be over, so that I can go back to tweeting Star Wars trivia and silly jokes." And he wasn't kidding. He was being serious, that he only cares as long as Trump is in office. And once that's over, he will stop using his celebrity to raise a platform for these issues.
Well, because he doesn't see anything wrong with a Biden presidency. And this is really, where the extreme privilege comes in, like the idea that you just want, and this was brought up, a while back with somebody saying that, oh, there are State Department employees that are really embarrassed by Trump, and they're just going to quit their job if Trump wins again. And it's like, I'm sorry that you're embarrassed by Trump and that you would feel less embarrassed in your job if Biden won. But wow, what a fucking place of privilege to be like, I just want to feel less embarrassed when I go to the Amalfi Coast in Italy. I just want to be able to say that I voted for a Democrat. The Democrats are in office. Like, fuck you. What an incredible privilege. Like, people are still dying on the ground here and elsewhere because of U.S. imperialism that's both a home and away game, the lack of healthcare, the extreme poverty. And all of that shit, and these people are worried about that. It's just embarrassing to have Trump as your president. It's embarrassing to have people that don't see the fucking connections between Trump and the system that birthed him, which Biden has been a part of for decades.
I want to respond to that. I also want to answer Rhonda. You can donate, but you have to donate. You have to donate over at youtube.com/momentofclarity. You can't do it on Facebook. Facebook doesn't allow us to do that. So go over to youtube.com/momentofclarity, click the $ underneath the comment box, and that's how you donate. And all the donations, the proceeds are going to mutual aid disaster relief. Now, what you were saying about I don't want to be embarrassed, and that's coming from an average American or whatever. But the truth is, the reason that the ruling elite, some of the deep state, etc., want to stop Donald Trump is because he's embarrassing to them. He has accidentally, through his megalomaniacal, narcissist, man-child diarrhea face, he has accidentally revealed the empire for what it is. It is a disgusting orange billionaire goon who's deeply in debt, never pays taxes, and is racist. And so he has revealed the empire for what it is accidentally. And that is why it's bad for the ruling elite to have Trump in that position. He is not a good CEO for America, Inc., because it makes it more difficult for them to exploit and tear apart the world if people understand what is happening, which with Trump in power you do. Now, that doesn't mean I'm supporting Trump because I just want things to be as horrible as possible. It's just a fact that most of the oligarchy, even right-wing oligarchy, is not really thrilled as to what Trump has been doing because it really reveals their hand.
Thanks, Blue.
Something else we haven't talked about, and feel free to guys to throw up questions or topics you want us to hit on.
Also, if you're just joining us or didn't hear this earlier, we are donating to mutual aid disaster relief tonight. So they have been vital and continue to be vital in providing support for mutual aid networks around the country and for folks on the ground. So please do donate if you can over at youtube.com/momentofclarity. Yes.
I can't tell if Alan is a troll or if he's being funny, but yes, Eleanor and I are Russian assets. Ooh, goodness. We're under your desk right now. You just don't know it.
Wait, then who's under my desk? Turtles all the way down.
So something we haven't talked about yet, which is another thing that, like I said earlier, like there's certain things that should be repeated endlessly as our mainstream media does this coverage. One of them is the millions purged from the rolls.
Thanks, Judith.
Thanks, Judith. But another one is the fact that most of the U.S. empire, the machinery of the U.S. empire, continues no matter who is in that top presidential spot. So a lot of this is spectacle. A lot of this is designed to distract Americans. That's not saying the president doesn't have any power. That's not saying Trump can't cause destruction. I mean, he assassinated General Soleimani, which probably put us closer to the cusp of nuclear annihilation than we've been in years. So there are things that a president can do that are terrifying or horrific. But in general, most of the machinery of this fucking capitalist empire continues to run pretty similar, whether you get a crazy man like Trump or you get somebody who's a more refined oligarchy leader like Obama. And so you like Trump gets into power, and what is the military is almost run basically exactly the same. A few times Trump said he's going to bring home troops, and then they put up some propaganda to stop him. But that's not much. Not much happened. The Wall Street's extraction of all of our lives, and how can you extract lives? You can extract lives. They suck your life out of you and pay you very little. And so Wall Street's extraction of America continues unfettered. I mean, maybe it's a little worse, but that's probably not due to Trump. That's probably due to other things. And the environmental destruction has continued basically unfettered. You go down the list, and most of the American empire runs the same, whether you have a Trump in office or a Biden or a Obama or a Bush. It's very similar. And so I'm not saying there's no difference at all, but it's much smaller than people think about. And so when you see all of this endless coverage, for years we've talked about this presidential election, for years. And when you see it's a spectacle to distract you and everyone from the deeper fucking world.
So, yes.
And yes.
Well, they taught us this in improv class, even though I fucking sucked at improv class. But also, like for unscripted in theater school, you should always acknowledge what the person before you said. Otherwise, it's not good acting. So yes, and somebody I saw in the comments, somebody asked me to mention the Act Out podcast. Thank you for mentioning that, so that I can mention it. The Act Out podcast is a bi-monthly podcast that I put out. It's just my podcast. And this past week, it was audio from the Deception 2020 series that I've been putting out. So check that out. Act Out podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, any of those places. There's also a Common Censored episode that came out yesterday. So if you all want to go listen to that as well.
Looks like they've, real quick update, looks like they've called some states for Biden. He's at 30 electoral votes. I think they called Maryland and D.C. and like Vermont or something. Anyway, nothing that's really.
Yeah, DC is basically 100% Democrat, so there's nothing surprising about that. But yeah, so what else?
Would you like to say anything about third parties? Is that a no?
No, I mean, so where to start? Y'all might have noticed, and somebody talked about the fact that people outside of the U.S. think it's hilarious that the U.S. only has two parties. And yes, we only have two parties in, like, as a
with 82% reporting Florida is essentially tied.
So technically speaking, we have many parties. Like realistically, we've got two. Thank you, Arcola.
And please donate those folks who can, and it's not too tough for you. Just hit the $sign. It goes to mutual aid.
And Arcola, if you weren't here at the beginning, I took a moment to acknowledge that a lot of folks feel like shit, and a lot of folks feel really stressed and worried, and definitely want to take a second again to acknowledge that, and that you are not alone, and there's much solidarity to be had amongst people that feel the same way. So thank you for donating, and thank you for being here, and sending you a lot of power and solidarity your way. With regards to third parties, if you looked at the ballot, the presidential ballot, then you'd see that there was, the Republicans and Democrats, and then there were these other third party little awkward, redheaded stepchildren over here somewhere.
I heard something about those. I don't know. Were they running this time or no?
So basically, the United States has worked incredibly hard to squash any, and it's really not, it's third, fourth, fifth, but we call them third parties, has worked really, really hard to squash any parties that try to rise to the ballot, certainly to the debate stage. And with regards to the debate stage, the presidential debates used to be under control of the League of Women Voters. And they would allow folks on stage that were not part of the main two parties. But then, what year was this that they took it over? They took it away from the...
Oh, yeah. Was it the 90s?
I can never remember the exact year. If you know the exact year, you put that in the chat and help us.
They took it from the League of Women Voters. Well, and also Ross Perot was the last time that they were like, we will ever have a third party on the debate stage. Ross Perot ruined it for the right wingers, for the GOP, and so they've never had a third party on that stage again.
Right. So, and this is why when there are presidential debates, I mean, here this year has been
1996.
This year, thank you. This year has been a little bit different.
And the decade.
This year has been a little different because of COVID. But when we have our presidential debates, it's like two fucking dudes, or two people up there, and you're like, but I thought that there are other parties, but they're not allowed on the debate stage, and they are also ballot access. So, for instance, there are some places. There are some places in the United States that still don't have, for instance, the Green Party, or like the DSA or not DSA, PSL or what have. Like, there are a bunch of parties that aren't on the ballots because ballot access is so restricted.
Yeah. They ask for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of signatures. They then will often find reasons not to accept them. So yeah, it's very hard to get on the ballot. I mean, it's funny. It's like, so Kanye, many of you know Kanye West ran for president this time, or is running for president this time around. But he basically made a deal with Trump to try and siphon some of the black vote from Biden. So Kanye actually met with Jared Kushner. It was designed to help Trump. I am no fan of Kanye or his garbage or the shit he spews. He says a lot of racist shit, surprisingly, but whatever. These fucking people are out there in the world. And anyway, so I'm not a fan of him. I don't want him on the ballot because I don't think he's a genuine human being. He's a sociopath like a bunch of them. But, but he's killed a lot less people than most GOP and Democrats. But thank you, Martin. But the Democrats mainly, but the system made sure he couldn't get on the ballot in several states. And it just goes to show how effective they are at stopping a third party from getting on the ballot.
We have a Norwegian troll. No, it's not really
we have a Norwegian troll.
No, Martin is from Norway. Hey, por igual. And he asks, do you guys believe Trump supporters can become violent? I was laughing at that question. Also, you're a Norwegian troll because I think that's cute. Laughing because that's kind of like saying, do you think that the sun will rise tomorrow? Based on all evidence that I have seen, the sun will rise tomorrow. And based on all evidence that I have seen, Trump supporters are violent, not will become violent.
Oh, come on. They were only going to execute that one governor.
Well, not only that, but Lee and I were both nearly run over by a Trump supporter in Charlottesville a few years ago. So we have firsthand experience.
For those of you who recall, this is not our own private story. This was a national news story where he is a terrorist. He drove through a crowd of people, tried to kill as many as possible. He succeeded in killing one person, broke countless limbs, and injured people severely. I'm sure many people will probably never get over the PTSD he gave to so many people. And we were 5 feet away. So we've been in the path, just about, of the actual killer behavior from Trump supporters. So. But that's
not the only time.
it goes to show you can see something like that, understand how fucked up it is, and still not go home and say, oh, that makes Biden the good guy. Yeah. It's like Biden has locked up, his crime bill has locked up millions of people, destroyed millions of lives. He supported wars that obliterated millions of fucking men, women, and children. And it's like, I can understand that and also not want to be run over by a fucking dickweed.
Absolutely. Nick has an interesting question, Lee. In very red or blue states, would you encourage folks to vote for third parties to help gain ballot access and debate access?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I've been in a secure state, which I've always been in a secure state, meaning not a battleground, I've always voted, well, once I became politically awake, I voted third party because you aren't risking anything. You're helping them get ballot access, and you can believe in your vote. You're voting for something positive, and usually, I suppose there could be a third party asshole too, but and so it's a lot more fun to actually be like, I voted for someone I think actually wants to create real change.
But it's also like the culture of voting in this country has to change. The understanding of what a vote means in this country has to fundamentally change, because you are taught in this country that your computer's going to die soon. That's not what you're taught in this country. You're taught in this country that your vote matters. Thank you, Rhonda. But also you have to vote for either one of these two parties. So your voice isn't important unless you agree with the two main parties. So it's a really twisted way that we're taught about voting in this country. And I say that as somebody who grew up with like kind of two different ways of looking at voting, one in Sweden and one in the United States. And in Sweden, there are bunches. There are lots of parties, and you can very easily vote for the party that you want to vote for. And because of the system, the parliamentary system that they have there, past a certain percentage, you get a seat in parliament. So the way that voting works outside of the United States and other countries, as opposed to how it votes here, is very, very undemocratic. And it's also like really a way to say that your vote doesn't count. Even if the votes were counted, they don't really count because you're not actually voting what you want. You're not voting for what you believe in, for what you agree with. So I think that, yes, I would encourage folks to vote for third parties. Vote for whatever you think makes the most sense for you and for the future of the fucking planet. However, so many people are not doing that because they feel that they have to vote for one of the two parties. So I think like that the culture around voting has to change. And I see that has to change, maybe not necessarily before, but it has to change with the accessibility of third parties having access to the ballot, because you could put third parties on the ballot, but if people still feel that they have to vote for the main two parties, it doesn't matter who the hell's on the ballot.
Damn straight. And a lot of this is another thing that's never mentioned in our mainstream media, but the amount of money spent is most of why this situation is so extreme. There is no chance for a third party to ever get the amount of money that could allow them to win one of these elections. You're talking millions of dollars, and of course, in the entirety of the election, billions upon billions of dollars. I remember from last time around, Sheldon Adelson, one billionaire, spent $100 million on the race, which I think Bloomberg may have spent something similar this time around to try and get Biden elected. But Adelson spent $100 million. That was the same amount the Labor Party spent on their entire election the year before. So one guy in America spent what the fucking Labor Party spent in the UK on their election. I mean, it's just ridiculous how money has fucking ruled this system. It has just taken it over in such an extreme that the actual people, actual human beings, have no shot of really getting a leg up in this electoral system.
Reminder, folks, that we are donating funds to mutual aid disaster relief. We've got
all the proceeds.
We've got about 15 minutes left. So if you can, please head over to youtube.com/momentofclarity. Please share this out.
How about if we get $50 in the next 5, we'll stay an extra 5. Next 5 minutes.
Okay. Yes. What he said. But please share this out, like it, and if you can donate, every dollar is going to mutual aid disaster relief. That's been really vital and pivotal in helping grassroots and frontline folks around the country before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and will continue after. Please feel free to say questions or topics you'd like us to hit on in these last few minutes, last 15 minutes. One thing I think his name was Ice Water on here. One thing I wanted to address, he said that the military is Republican. And there may be a lot of Republicans in the military, but that is certainly not the case anymore. Much of the military top brass is either claims to be nonpartisan or is Democrat, and it really the wow, Stina, thank you, Stina.
$50. Thank you so much for mutual aid disaster relief. But the Democrats in this election have really been running farther to the right than Trump on foreign policy. I mean, they say he's not hard enough on Russia when he's been far harder on Russia than Obama has, which of course pushes us. Thank you, Chuck. Which of course pushes us further towards nuclear war. I mean, why the fuck would you want to do that? They go after him for wanting to bring like 10,000 troops home from Afghanistan. They go after him for not being hard enough on like Venezuela or so. I mean, it is fucking disgusting what we've done to these countries. And the Democrats are have been running to the right on military of Donald Trump and the GOP. I mean, it's so fucking repulsive. There is no party of peace. There's not even a party of maybe decrease the Pentagon by 10%. They tried to do that, and fucking no one voted for it. They voted to raise the Pentagon budget.
Yeah, so I think that the military is supported strongly by both sides of the aisle. So the Democrats are perhaps even more war hawkish because there are a lot of libertarians that are on like kind of the right side of the aisle that believe in more of like an isolationist policy. Their domestic policies are absolute shite, but they don't want war. Quick
update: no states that are I don't think any battleground states have been announced yet, but the Biden has 30 electoral votes and Trump has 26 so far. It doesn't really mean much until you start hearing about battleground states. But anyway, just thought I'd give you the update.
Wow, thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, it's so awesome to be here with y'all. So thank you so much for donating. Thanks so much for sharing this and hanging out with us. So we're now going to 8:35. Is that what I've understood from that math that you?
Around 8:30. Yeah.
Wait, you said 5 extra minutes, which means.
Oh yeah, did we get the money?
Yeah.
Okay, 8:35.
Okay. We're very good at the maths over here at.
We need to hire someone to do the math. Separate math person. So some other.
Wow! Thank you.
Wow,
AD.
$40. Thank you so much, AD. That's incredible. Okay, so a couple other.
He said he was going to vote. He was going to. How the fuck does your thing work? He was going to invest this in brunch futures on the commodities exchange after Biden's win, but I think it's better spent here. Completely agree with you, AD. Thank you so much for going brunch on this one. What?
Okay. So a couple other things. So I'm sure some people are wondering, what happens if Trump declares victory, despite the fact that the votes have not been counted. So if Trump, thank you, Annabelle.
Thank you, Annabelle.
So if Trump comes forward tonight and just declares victory because, let's say, he's winning the day of vote in Pennsylvania, even though the larger vote in Pennsylvania has not come out, and he just declares victory, and so you end up in a some sort of crisis of like, well, who's the next president? I think some people are wondering, will the Supreme Court get involved? Because obviously that is now 6-3 conservative or whatever. But first of all, the odds of the Supreme Court getting involved are incredibly slim. There's a tiny percentage chance of them getting involved. And if they get involved, it's not even certain that they would just immediately side with Trump. In some of these lawsuits about throwing out votes recently, the past few days, they've actually sided with counting the votes. Because here's the thing, the Supreme Court, despite being fucking awful human beings and all this shit, some of the time they actually go with the law. And so asking them to just throw out votes is, they usually don't side with that. But anyway, obviously they did in 2000. They were like, yeah, fuck it, just give it to Bush. But so that's one thing. Another thing is, could it come down to if the votes are showing a Biden win and Trump is saying he won, like what happens? Could it come down to the military deciding which side they're going to go with? And
thanks, Bev.
My view on this, and you can give your view as well. My view on whether the military could decide, in that case, is that it probably wouldn't get to that. Because here's the thing, is the oligarchy, our ruling elite, a tiny number of individuals, would rather the system go forward unscathed under a Trump presidency, meaning, Wall Street continues the same, war continues the same, military, it all continues, than end up with a constitutional crisis where you literally have like military declaring the winner and people fucking revolting and all this stuff. So they would back down, I imagine. Biden would probably back down the same way Gore backed down in 2000. Because at the end of the day, they want to win. Yes, the Democrats and a lot of the deep state, yes, they want to win. They want to get Trump out because, like I said earlier, he accidentally reveals the empire for what it is. But they'd rather things just go smoothly, So if Trump puts enough pressure and there's enough like fucking infighting as to what actually happened in this election, I bet you the Democrats back down and just let it happen.
What was it? Yes.
I think some people are wondering if there is
Peppy and James.
If there is a Trump declaring victory while Biden is getting the votes, but it's close enough. How would it be decided?
And you were talking about the Supreme Court.
So the Supreme Court is one thing that some people think, oh my God, it's going to be the Supreme Court. And other people are saying, well, it's who the military goes with, right? That's where the power lies at the end of the day.
Well, so here's the thing. I am definitely wary of the United States military. Wow, thank you, Annabella. Thank you so much.
Wow, $20. Thank you, Annabelle.
I am definitely wary of the United States military. It's the largest military that the world has ever seen. Also wary of the police departments because they're a military unto themselves. I mean, shit, the New York City Police Department on its own has a larger budget than the entire military of North Korea. So I'm just like, whether it's law enforcement or military and where those lines blur, because they definitely do. Thank you, Obama 1033 program. It's very, very important to highlight that the military is part of the deep state that is not tied to any particular party. And this goes back to what we were just talking about, the fact that Democrats love the Pentagon. They love the Pentagon. They're always shoving money at the Pentagon and like, you're poor and you're... Well, but I'm bringing up the Democrats because I think some people think that, the military is going to go with the right wing. Our entire system is right wing. Like, I'm sorry, but the newsflash, there is no left-wing representation in government. It's all fucking right-wing.
So then the question is, would they go with Trump? Let's not say right.
No, the military would not go with Trump. The military is concerned with upholding the illusion of the United States. That's part of their their shtick. So I think you'd immediately have generals and admirals and whatever the fuck else on television talking about how we need to respect our democracy and how they're going to support the commander-in-chief, whoever that may be. You're not going to see the military shift to a Trump. And part of this is also because their work is unchanged. You know, if there was like a heavily anti-war candidate that was on the ballot, then maybe I'd say, yeah, we could definitely see some risk of the military choosing somebody who wasn't voted in. But Biden is a hell of a fucking war hawk. So it doesn't matter to the military who the fuck wins at the end of the day, because they're going to get all of the money they ask for and more. They're going to get all of their weapons contracts, and the military industrial complex will roll forward at a hefty speed regardless of who is in the White House come January. So I don't see the military going like, yes, for Trump, because I don't think that what's in it for them to try and stage that kind of that kind of fight. Also, because the streets are plenty flooded with law enforcement, and the National Guard has already been tapped in many cities around the nation. So I don't think the military feels the need to get into that space as well, because again, something that's
thank you, Underhill.
Something that's incredibly important is to retain this facade of democracy, this mirage democracy. And if you just busted the military out into the streets and had the military like mowing people down while waving a Trump flag, then that facade is ripped apart. And that facade has been crumbling, of course, thanks to COVID and thanks to a lot of things. But that sort of extreme shift where the military just says, fuck you, I'm going to go with Trump, I don't see that happening, because it does, again, at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter to them. They're going to have support regardless of who wins.
Okay, so guys, we got 10 minutes left. Let us know what your thoughts are. Please donate if you're able to. The donations, all the proceeds are going to Mutual Aid Disaster Relief, which is a completely nonprofit. They give away everything. They're mainly volunteers, and they're out to help anyone and everyone who needs it. So there's chapters around the country. It depends on which city you're in as to how active your chapter or area is. But
well, there's mutual aid around the country. Mutual Aid Disaster Relief has done a really good job of connecting these networks of autonomous mutual aid networks, creating whatever. Mutual Aid Disaster Relief. Mutual Aid Disaster Relief. I get my words got stuck at the back of my brain, and by the time they made it to the front, they were all jumbled. But Mutual Aid Disaster Relief does fucking wonderful work and really powerful. So please do donate. We only have a few minutes left here, so.
Quick update: with 90% of the vote in Florida, Trump is winning by a point or two. So you're getting pretty close to maybe some sort of Florida decision being made. Apparently, I don't know, they claim Florida is actually very quick at counting their votes and very quick at getting them in.
Which would be a first.
As I said earlier, they apparently have better machines for burning all the black votes. They worked very hard to create that technology, that it's actually a racist computer. If you're black and you just walk by that computer, it'll yell shit at you. So that thing purges all the black votes and then gets the vote in really quick. I'm sure Tim Canova and some of the others who have run in other Florida races would have a lot to say about how accurate this early vote in Florida reporting is. But Tim Canova famously ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz last time around. Well, he ran against her twice, and they literally, the Board of Elections, the woman, the head of the Board of Elections, they burned all the ballots like the night after. And she signed off on it, like, get rid of the ballots. Mm-hmm. Now, why would you need to burn all the ballots? Because you don't want to recount. And when she was brought into court for signing off on getting rid of all the ballots, she said, I didn't know what I was signing. So
thanks, James.
There you go. That's the Florida. That's the quick Florida count. And then last time around, they had video of, because chain of custody with these ballots is very important. If you have ballots, they can't just drive around the state. Right. And last time around, there's video of them just loading buckets of ballots into a truck and driving it, like a random truck, not like an official state truck, and driving it to some other location. This doesn't mean they were stealing the ballots or anything. It just means like there is fucking no chain of evidence.
Thanks, Gene.
And anyway, who knows? I'm not saying that happened this time, but I'm saying there's been a lot of Florida shit that goes down. And but now they're claiming Florida great at reporting, and we're going to know in about an hour.
Yeah, that makes you feel so like secure and trust, and so much trust in the system, right? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. We're doing this live stream now, and this isn't a live stream where we're going to sit and announce who wins. And I keep doing this
because we only have 5 minutes left.
You can't actually win an election if the whole thing's fucking rigged and farce. Anyway, thank you, Osama. We're doing this live stream just basically to put shit in context. To share some of the results.
Some of the things that they fucking won't talk about. They'll do hours, and they need to fill time. They don't even have shit to say the whole time.
I'm amazed at what they can fucking talk about.
And they will never mention all the people purged. They'll never mention the fact that we have faulty machines. They'll never mention that, yes, the machines are hackable, but only in person, usually. So they're not actually hackable by Russians. They're hackable by fucking dudes at the fucking booth.
Or 11-year-olds.
Or 11-year-olds.
Because actually there was a hackathon several years ago where they basically they had a used voting machine, and they were able to just plug in a fucking USB, and this was a fucking 11-year-old that was able to plug in a USB and then in 5 minutes hack the voting machine. So yeah, we don't need help to make our voting system shitty. We can do that all by our lonesome. Thank you, Underhill.
The other thing I love, which is just ridiculous, is CNN and all the others. They've just got endless things coming up saying, Biden's at 49% and Trump's at 36% with 5% reporting. It's like, if 5% of the vote is in, then that means nothing. That means nothing. And yet they just keep flashing, Georgia, Trump winning by 99% with a 0.5% in.
I know, it's like they started calling a horse race as soon as they got out of the fucking gate. So
Lucy would like us to talk about climate change. Oh, or maybe she's saying the news needs to talk about climate change. But.
Yeah, well, no shit. We definitely talk about climate change and climate justice quite a bit, but that's another thing that you're not going to see discussed on in whoever wins this fucking election. That is not going to be a big point of discussion. Biden has already said that he does not want anything to do with the Green New Deal. And by the way, the Democrats' Green New Deal is a watered down version of the original Green New Deal, which was something that was brought by the Green Party from the Green Party in Europe, and had a lot of a much more eco-socialist bent to it, that recognized that socialism had to be part of the part of this Green New Deal has to be taking down capitalism. But of course, that's not going to be part of the Green New Deal that the Democrats put forward, as I think it was Nancy Pelosi who proudly said, "Look, America's capitalist, okay?" And she was correct.
Last chance to donate for mutual aid disaster relief. Thank you all who have donated. All the proceeds tonight going to mutual aid disaster relief really goes to help people. And speaking of the Green New Deal, this is how third parties can have an impact even without being in Congress or being in various governments. The Green New Deal, despite being watered down, as Eleanor was talking about, it originated from the Green Party, saying, we can give people jobs and fucking work to save the environment at the same time. It was a large scale plan and stolen by the Democrats. And then what was the other one I was going to say? Came from the Green Party, Medicare for All. So these are big talking points. They've just declared West Virginia for Donald Trump. These are big talking points for nowadays. Bernie Sanders. It's a national Medicare for All is a national talking point, and it didn't exist until the Green Party brought it up, and same with Green New Deals.
Yeah. So thank you, Sahela. Really appreciate it. Shay, thank you. This is you make a very good point, and this is also why if you're working in the realm of electoral politics, third parties are super important to support and discuss. Kind of like with climate change, because the corporate media and the establishment is not going to talk about them. So we need to continue bringing these things up and having the conversations that actually matter to folks on the ground, because at the end of the day, nothing that these candidates have been saying will have an effect on people's lives. So I mean, that's why you had, West Virginia was just declared for Trump. The reason that you had folks in West Virginia that were going for Bernie is because Bernie was actually talking about some shit that people could relate to. Like, oh, well, I've got black lung. I don't want to have to die and put my, force my family into bankruptcy. So yeah, maybe we should have something like universal health care. So, the actual issues at hand need to continue being discussed. And this is something that's going to happen outside the ballot box today, tomorrow, whenever the fuck the win comes in. It's not going to make that much of a difference for you and me, like on the front lines, in the grassroots. The most marginalized folks in the United States will continue to be the most marginalized people. Imperialism will continue. Capitalism, cutthroat colonialism, all of these things will continue over, regardless of who wins. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
So yeah, these conversations have to keep happening. These actions have to keep happening. The fight, but more importantly, the build has to keep happening.
Yes, keep fighting out there, folks. We're wrapping up here. Please click subscribe. Many of you may think you're subscribed and you're not. So please click subscribe. Please click the bell icon next to it. Thank you, Nick, for $15 going. All the donations to go to mutual aid disaster relief. We will be doing another live stream soon, and we'll let you know how much we donated. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, we have a lot of other stuff going on. If you want to hear more about West Virginia, Eleanor has an incredible movie, and it's not just about West Virginia. It's really about the entirety of the American system and corporate takeover. And that is at hardroadofhope.com, hardroadofhope.com. Thank you, Felicia. Thank you, Annabelle.
Thank you all for donating. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Nick, to your point, you can check out mutualaiddisasterrelief.org. They've got lists of local groups up there. To everyone, again, just want to wrap this up with acknowledging that people are stressed, worried, concerned, fucking angry. Acknowledge that and know that you are not alone. As Patoka noted, it's the solidarity of the shaken. And we recognize that we do not have no gods and no masters looking out for us, but we are looking out for each other. Thank you, Marcello. So thank you again for hanging out with us. Solidarity and love to all of you, and we will see you on the other side.
Keep fighting.